Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only podcast in the world that is purely focused on cycling, style, aesthetics, kit, and everything pertaining to that. I am your host, Alex, joined by my co-hosts, Warren and Tony. And as usual, the podcast is brought to you by our partners at Le Club. LeClub.cc. They are the hosts to the world's most exciting, the best, the hottest cycling brands, shop brands like MAAP, Universal Colors, the Service Course, Fingers Crossed Socks, Quoc shoes. They've got everything you want. They're launching new categories. They just launched Albion, new brand over at LeClub.cc. And we are very happy to bring to our listeners a special code to shop over at leclub.cc. Use the code FashionWeek15 to get 15% off your order. They do worldwide shipping. They also have the best coffee in the business. And they're just really nice people based here in Montreal as well. So we're very happy to have them as partners. Go to leclub.cc, get 15% off using the code FashionWeek15. Tony and Warren, how's it going? Are you going to use that discount code? Are you going to mash the keyboard to use that discount code?
I already have. I ordered some VeloFlex tires, actually.
Did you flex on people with your tires?
Not yet. I mean, they just showed up today. I haven't put them on my bike yet, but you guys will be happy. I finally got tan sidewall to put on my bike.
Thank God.
You said it didn't look good on your bike, though. How do you feel about it?
Well, I haven't put them on yet, so we'll see.
Your bike is blue, and blue and brown have gone together for is a great color combination. Anyone would tell you. But I also just want to add with MAAP. I was in Montreal this weekend, and I went to Le Club. They didn't recognize me, the baristas, which is a little upsetting. I figured that our pictures should have been up on the wall or something. So
like our numbers should be retired, like in hockey arenas.
Yeah, exactly, like in the Bell Center. But anyways. The coffee's great. We've been getting beans from them, but I had a Danish from them. I'm not sure where they get it, if it's in-house or they order out, but the Danish, it was a raspberry Danish, and it was incredible. So on top of their great customer service, their great collection of clothing, their amazing coffee, if you're in Le Club in Montreal, get a Danish.
You have a nice time in Montreal, Tony?
I had a great time. The place I stayed was a little dumpy, but I was just there for a short weekend, so it didn't matter. It didn't really matter. My accommodations was kind of crap, but
just for our listeners, Tony stayed in my house while I was away. So,
and it's a beautiful. I'm kidding. It's a beautiful house. It was amazing.
A little upsetting that he says my house is a dump, but
wow. I only say you only say mean jokes like that when you know it's the opposite, right? Because it's so obvious that it's a joke. But
Tony, all right.
I also had something else to bring up besides our love of the club, which, though they pay us, it's a true, genuine love for them. Is mistakes we make, rare on this podcast, or rare that at least we admit it. But in last episode with our boys at Attacker, I threw something into the Canal. And now I'm not taking this out of the Canal. So I threw painting cycling kicks to look like sort of bigger, more mainstream brands, Nike, what have you. And that's still going in the Canal. I'm not changing that. But in sort of the effort to make it a little bit lighthearted and fun, a company called VeloKicks was mentioned. And I, without a lot of info on them, threw them into the Canal to try and get a laugh out of everybody. I'd heard of them before, but didn't do much research on them. So I thought they were just an Instagram that posted, painted custom kicks. I didn't realize that they were a company in themselves that not only offers painted kicks, but actually offers a really stylish, nice range of their own shoes. So I want to apologize to the good people of VeloKicks for throwing in the Canal. It wasn't my intention. I didn't do my journalistic due diligence. So I just want everyone to
which you usually do, right?
Which I often do. So yeah, apologies to VeloKicks. I probably won't be any better in the future, but I'll keep apologizing if I have to.
I'll own part of the responsibility because I mentioned VeloKicks. I didn't throw them in Canal. I'm not apologizing for anything. I knew they made shoes, but I didn't clarify that they also did the custom paint thing. So, as usual, the thing I tell Tony everything he knows. So I should have probably just mentioned that they make shoes, and I agree they're pretty nice shoes.
But you can now the painted, like the shoes that are painted to look like Nike or Adidas, and that's still in the Canal though.
Yeah, that's still in the Canal. But if you look back, because I didn't know about that much about Velo kicks, Warren sort of mentioned them, and I said in a admittedly hilarious manner, on a kind of an off the cuff thing. I said, "Well, they're in the Canal too," and then they're a small company. I'm trying to talk shit about people representing big brands and not supporting cycling brands, and then they're the small company. I'm sort of flippantly throwing them into the Canal, and it's not what we're trying to do
Your
here.
take should have been Canal actually. Like your Canal, you didn't think it through
My
properly.
joke should have been Canal, but my take was dead on. Like, I'm not
Your
stopping.
take was correct. The
I
joke was
don't
not.
want to see a painted Nike shoe, but I don't
Well,
want to
kudos to
throw.
you. Kudos to Tony for being the big man here and admitting that it takes men with a lot of character to do that. Now, speaking of shoes, cycling shoes, and speaking of very nice white shoes, actually, we have a huge episode this week. I know I say that every week, but it's true. We are welcoming Quoc Pham, the founder of Quoc Shoes. He's going to be coming on the podcast. We'll do an interview with him, and we're gonna sort of talk about cycling shoes in general, and just ask him, what makes a good shoe, what should you be looking in for cycling shoes, and also talk about his brand, talk about his design story. He's actually a really interesting guy because he doesn't come from the cycling world; he comes from the fashion world. Although he was interested in cycling, and he sort of brought that over into cycling shoe design. So we'll have him on. We'll have him on the podcast in a little bit for a pretty interesting interview with Quoc, the man himself.
One last plug for Le Club. We had that discount code at the top. They sell Quoc shoes. So, if you're in the market for some really nice white shoes, Tony's going to hate that I'm upselling but they are they are some nice shoes for sure. So and he has some. They also have some nice gravel ones.
So before we go into the regular segments and into the interview, there's one thing I want to talk about with you guys. I think we've been remiss on not talking about this. We've been covering the World Tour kits. I think we've been doing actually great journalistic coverage on the World Tour kits so far this year, not to brag. We've been kind of reviewing the kits. It's been good. There is one thing, though, an egregious omission on our part that we didn't talk about, and it sort of just hit me in the face as I was kind of absent-mindedly watching the Giro recently. By the way, I find the Giro's been a little bit boring this year.
Incredibly boring.
Is it just
Yeah,
me
very.
that's not been into it? I've got other
Incredibly
stuff
boring.
going on.
Nothing's
It's just been
happened.
so boring. Nothing's happening.
The most exciting thing that happened was on the podium.
Yes, that was funny. But I love the Giro. Now, the Eolo-Kometa team, which I believe is Alberto Contador's team, where he gets to sort of show his bikes and his Aurum bikes. So there's a little piece of detail on their kit, and I think it's been talked about a lot, but we didn't discuss it. I think it's incredible. They've got that Burger King burger like right on the riders' butts. I mean, in terms of product placement and the perfect sort of geographical placement of that product, I don't think I've ever seen it quite as good in the pro peloton. Like, this is some top-notch stuff on the part of Burger King. I think it's got to be one of the top kits so far this year just because of that detail. What do you guys think?
I agree. It's hilarious, first of all, like just to see the Burger King logo on somebody's ass, but also in terms of like actual product logo placement, it really stands out on the kit itself. The logo is very noticeable. I really like the idea of fast food brands getting into sponsoring cycling teams, and I think it's only it's not international Burger King doing the sponsorship, but just imagine a world where like McDonald's, Wendy's, all these kinds of brands, imagine a world where they're putting their money into the pro peloton. Like I think that's exciting too, to see like a Ronald McDonald type kit.
There's this meme account. I know you guys are pretty down on meme accounts overall.
Yeah.
You can now them, but at Gas Station Food Cyclist, his motto is eat trash, ride fast.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Burger King just fits that motto perfectly. Like when you're starving, your last like 10 kilometers of your 100-kilometer ride, you're starving. All you can think about is burgers. I don't know. I just think it's really on brand for Eolo-Kometa to be.
It worked for me on my trip to Montreal this weekend. We stopped at the service station at the off the highway, and I got Burger King, and there were a couple more options. I'm not saying I specifically did it, but it probably worked in a very good marketing way because maybe subconsciously I went there and thought, yeah, I gotta have Burger King. Like that's what I gotta have. And it's just because I've been watching many boring long hours of the Giro, which has looked like my group rides, and it just stuck with me. So maybe I think the product placement is great, and I think that designer needs a raise if they haven't already been made head designer at whatever company. And yeah, it'd be cool to get some bigger brands and ones that sort of antithetical to cycling. So it's like, this is a fitness sport, eat well or whatever. No, Burger King.
Well, the cannabis industry has been going strong into gravel, right? Like Floyd's of Leadville from, I
I thought
think,
they
Floyd
folded.
Landis. Are they folded? Okay, well,
I
but
think
they
so.
were they were sponsoring a team for some time. So I mean, I don't know. It seems like Burger King goes pretty well with cannabis.
Burger King kind of is a gas station in its own way.
Okay, getting into our regular segments, we're going to do news this week because there's actually a bunch of stuff that came out that was worthy of a mention and a comment on Cycling Fashion Week this week. And we will start strong with a new release that is a sort of three-way collaboration between Rapha, between Legion of Los Angeles, which is the Williams Brothers team out of LA, and between the website Highsnobiety, which appears to be actually a popular sort of Instagram account, but also an e-commerce website for fashion and stuff like that. And I guess I'm betraying my age here since I don't
Hmm.
really know what that is.
I can chime in on Highsnobiety because
Because Tony's so much younger than I am.
no, because I had a little foray into the sneaker world many years ago, and so they're essentially kind of they're like a commerce thing, kind of very hype beast esque website where they're really selling the kind of it's sneaker, it's streetwear culture, it's that kind of stuff. So I mean that's why I guess they've kind of hit with this.
Yeah, so definitely not my world, but anyway, I had to look at it. So let me describe what they released. So they released a jersey which is actually pretty interesting. It's a bit of a departure from what Rafa has been doing recently. It's a sort of geographical motif jersey. There's an H on it, which I assume is for Highsnobiety. There's a hoodie that they came out with. It says Legion, it says Rafa, it says Highsnobiety on it. There's a cycling cap, there's a t-shirt, there's a musette, and there is a water bottle as well, which is actually not a cycling bidon. It's a Nalgene sort of translucid bottle that has the color pink, and it's got all the logos of these nice people on it. So I guess, guys, I'm going to ask the question. I think the jersey looks really good. It's got sort of a cream color. It's got a dark forest green. It's got the Rapha black armband, and it's got some blue on it. Really interesting mix of shapes, really interesting mix of colors. So I'm going to ask the question, is Rapha back?
I mean, I don't know if I want to give too much credit to Rapha on this. I mean, because of the collab, who knows where the design came
Yeah, I
from?
was
Like,
thinking that.
was it somebody on Legion? Because,
Well, but someone at Rapha okayed the collaboration, which
well, yeah, we're not going to credit them for giving a thumbs up. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's a step in the right direction for
I think
Rapha.
I think it's a success personally. I
Yeah,
think it
I
looks
agree.
really good.
My point is, like, I don't want to give Rapha all the credit for this because I like it a lot. I think it probably more leans toward, who knows? It doesn't matter. The point is, I like it a lot. I like the jersey. It's a nice departure from a lot of the collabs you see these days. It's unique. It's distinct. The lines are pretty crisp, so it's not like, I feel like we've seen a lot of wild splatter designs lately. It's not that, which is nice.
Yeah, it's different. It's different from what other people are doing. Now, in terms of the hoodie and the t-shirt, it's a little too hype beastie for me. I guess if I were a 22-year-old Gen Z with the kind of mushroom haircut that we had when we were kids, which I think appears to be what the Gen Z kids are having today. Maybe I would wear it. I'm a little too old for that stuff, so maybe not. But the actual cycling stuff, like the cap and the jerseys, like they're really nice, I think, and it's a big step in the right direction, I would say, for Rafa.
So I want to say, I mean, I think that you're right. It's a great design. I don't know if you say Rapha's back because this is a collaboration. They were involved with the Palace Cannondale, like they're a manufacturer. Someone's, approving it, but does it mean that this will extend to their regular collection? I don't know. But I want to say this is genius on Legion's part. Like we've already talked about how wearing pro team kit is in the Canal. It's a no-go. We did sort of give a little pass for Legion's kit on a listener many episodes ago who asked us because they're kind of a bit cooler, but it's still like a kind of weird dancey cuss. But like for this is a jersey anyone could wear. It doesn't it doesn't scream pro team jersey, but I assume there's some monetization coming for Legion. So they're essentially getting to sell a Legion jersey to people who will want to wear it, right? And won't feel that, oh, I'm wearing a pro team kit. I'm wearing that kind of stuff, like that thinks it's a really nice, cool kit. And then they're going to get a little bit of money out of it. So I think that that's a really like genius part on Legion. And I almost like, I mean, there's a very specific type of team because they're smaller, continental. I don't know if you do it with World Tour, but if World Tour teams maybe sort of make collaborations and release sort of recreational friendly style jersey or something to recoup some money. And then secondly, I just want to say one more quick thing that kind of worries me. I noticed on the Highsnobiety website that right now the cap and musette are sold out. Could be because it's the lowest price point items, but my worry is that it's been purchased by a bunch of hype beasts who don't like cycling, and now we're going to have a bunch of 22-year-old Gen Zers with mushroom cuts looking like 2006 track messengers. Regular people are going to be walking around in a pair of Nike Air Force Ones and a cycling cap.
But the jersey is actually not outrageously priced. It's 125 US dollars.
Props to Legion for making it a reasonable price for a jersey. Like, there's probably a lot of people maybe who are new to cycling or maybe haven't even bought kit who see this and are now interested because maybe they only know cycling through Legion. And I don't want to pretend like it's a bargain, but like in the scheme of cycling, that is a bargain.
And they could have easily have priced it way higher and said,
Exactly.
hey, that's a limited run, limited edition. It's a collector's.
Like I think the EF Palace kit when they sold it to the masses the jersey was like 250, or I could be wrong, but it was a lot.
But then they also importantly kept the hoodie at the same price as the jersey. So they kept within it's like this jersey's a performance wear thing. It's a pretty reasonable price, but just to show that we're still in the cycling world, we're going to charge this Gildan cotton sweatshirt with some screen printing on it the same price. So
I think the hype beasts have more demand for the hoodie than they do for the jersey, hence the price adjustment.
Yeah.
Next thing we're going to talk about is another release from one of the big brands, one brand that we like, and it's the Axis collection from MAAP, the Australian brand. So interesting release from MAAP in that they are straying away a little bit from the block colors that have been really pervasive in the last few years. With the rise of minimalism in cycling fashion, we've seen a lot of brands come out with just simple block colors, navy bibs, marigold jersey, keep it real simple, which there's nothing wrong with. I think people generally like that in general. We've generally been fans. We've bought a ton of it. But so MAAP released the Axis collection, which is interesting in that it, the jersey, I guess the base of the jersey is a block color, but there's other stuff on it. There's interesting elements on the jersey. There's some logos. There's an M letter. There's a triangle. There's the MAAP logo in small, but there's also this kind of big globe in the center of the jersey. So sort of if you were looking at a map of the earth in globe form, there's that on the chest, and then there's two lines under that. So they've got two colors for the jersey. One is a pale pink, which I have to say, as a fan of anything pink, just absolutely beautiful. It's basically Giro pink, or maybe a little paler than the Giro pink. And the other one is what they call Storm, which is a gray, I guess a sort of metallic gray, maybe even veering on light blue a little bit. So lots going on that jersey, different from what has been released in the last few years. I guess I've already said what I think about it. I think it's really nice. Guys, what did you think?
I like it a lot. And the primary reason is it reminds me of some of the stuff MAAP used to make when they were pretty early on that got me excited about MAAP in the first place. Like you mentioned the colors, but there's also a long sleeve with the same design that's like just black and white. And that one in particular reminds me a lot of this jersey MAAP used to make. That was like, it was basically all these different iterations of the MAAP logo, but it kind of looked like a World Tour team jersey, but it was just MAAP logo. Anyway, and that one really reminded me of that. So yeah, I like it. I think almost for a nostalgic reason of what MAAP used to be. Not that I dislike what they're doing now, but I like, some of the stuff they did recently. I recently got that, like, I think it's called the Pine jersey. That's like orange with like some arrow design thing. I like the fact that they're bringing back some more design elements. So yeah, I like this a lot.
So I love this. This is MAAP to me. They were the I've said this before. They were one of the first brands I noticed kind of coming into this sort of more recent iteration of cycling clothing, kind of the stuff that spurred on post Rapha, but the stuff that sort of spurred on this podcast. And this is kind of how I thought them. Very sort of clean, but also kind of funky. Some interesting sort of looks. I will 100% be purchasing the long sleeve Axis black jersey. I just think it looks amazing. It's not like too over the top, but I do want to say something to give kudos to us. So I'm noticing on the website, it's when it's talking limited edition MAAP Axis Progress Performance Panache. Now I'm not saying we invented panache. We obviously didn't invent panache, but I think if you were to look at a graph of panache's usage in the cycling world since we came out with the Panache Police, I think it's gone up. I've noticed a lot of brands using panache in their marketing. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying I didn't see it a lot. It's a popular term. It's been around for a long time.
Panache is a stock. I'm definitely buying that stock, and we pushed up the stock
Yeah.
ourselves because we pumped it on Wall Street
Yeah.
Bets.
Yeah, for sure. Reddit. We were the Reddit Wall Street Bets of panache.
I don't want to make any Brant Soresen-esque claims, but there's some MAAP employees that follow us on Instagram, so one might assume they listen to the show. I don't know. It's not a far leap to go that they're hearing us
Also,
talk
not
about.
like panache is a term that's been used in cycling for decades, but hey,
That's what I'm saying. It was dead. You weren't seeing it anywhere. And now I get almost every time I read a new release or a marketing material from a new cycling kit brand, they talk about panache. And I'm just saying, again, I'm not saying we know we didn't invent it. We know it's been around for a long time, but it was in the Canal, and we dove in there and dredged it up, and now it's the most popular term. Listen, am I saying that we were the influence? Yes, I'm 100% saying we were the influence. And if MAAP wants to reach out and just admit it on air, we'd love to do that.
okay, all right. So the next item we're going to talk about now, this one broke my brain a little bit. Kind of twisted my brain into a pretzel, and I had to read it twice because I was really wondering what is going on here. So the Spanish fast fashion, let's call them that, fast fashion brand Zara, which is ubiquitous, they launched a bib short, which I was wondering, hang on, is this just for, again, not to put Gen Z on the spot too much, but I note that wearing cycling shorts or shorts that look like cycling shorts but that don't have a chamois, that seems to have become a thing among Gen Z with like a baggy t-shirt. So I was wondering initially, is this only what it is? In which case it's perfectly on brand for Zara. But no, actually not. It is. They call it the strappy cycling culotte. And they don't call that a bib, they call that a culotte, which I thought was interesting, but it's made of a fabric, they say, with high elasticity. It's got elastic straps for freedom of movement. It's got flat lock anti-abrasion seams and multifunctional pockets on the sides and back. So effectively what these things are is they are gravel bibs, basically. So Zara launched a gravel bib that has pockets on the side so you can put your snacks, or if you're Warren, when you go on your mountain bike looking gravel rides. No, but you're a gravel guy though. You can put your gravel stuff in your gravel pockets. So yeah, Zara coming out of nowhere, really, like just from left field. Zara doing that, coming out with a cycling bib. It kind of broke my brain. They actually look good. I mean, they're all black. There's a series of like numbers on one of the thighs. I believe it's on the right one. There's a pocket on the bum as well, which I thought was weird. Like there's pockets on the legs, but pockets on the bum, I don't really know about that one. It feels like
that's where your Burger King logo goes.
Yeah, exactly. You should put a Burger King logo. You shouldn't put a phone in there because if you're riding gravel with this thing, you hit a pothole or a bump, your phone's gone. Yeah, Zara just coming out of nowhere to have cycling bibs. What did you guys think?
It's worth noting that though this is coming from Zara, it seems that they have worked with a cyclist by the name of Sammy Sari, who if you've ever seen any of the Thereabouts movies by the Morton brothers, Gus and Lachlan Morton, she was in a few of them, and the series they did with Rapha. I think she's a former competitive cyclist. I don't know pro, I'll be perfectly honest. Now I would say she's sort of like an influencer. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, it seems that she's behind the design of this collection. Like, she put out an Instagram post talking about it. So I just want to make sure we're also crediting her. I can't fault these. Like, they look pretty nice. If another brand put these out, I'd be like, yeah, pretty nice. So, and the price, I think in Canada they're $130 Canadian. I will admit I am skeptical of the quality and durability.
I'm extremely
I'm
skeptical.
so skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay for these, but I need someone who has a connection to Zara to send us each a pair. Knowing what Zara is as a company in the fast fashion, and having like owned a couple things from them that sort of fell apart as I was, taking it out of the packaging. My question is, like, even for $120, which now kind of in the realm of cycling gear seems inexpensive, like it still seems like it might be a ripoff. Like, I just can't imagine Zara, which his whole thing is like super inexpensive, quick turnover stuff.
It just feels wrong. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe this is
It's not ugly, but
elitism.
I'm not going to endorse anybody buy these, because I wouldn't buy them, because I'm with Tony. I've bought normal clothes from Zara and the quality was awful.
Yeah, not much. Not, you buy once and you realize it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to take away from actual like cycling brands with like proper cyclists behind them doing all the day-to-day stuff. And the other thing I was going to add is most of these brands, even small ones, like our friends over at Albion, have a lifetime repair program. You know what I mean? If your bibs rip, they'll sew them up, fix them. Whereas with Zara,
Yeah, they're just you imagine you email Zara, you're like, my bibs are, I crashed my bibs, or they're like, yeah, just Canal them.
They're like, you're what? You're culottes?
That's not to take anything away from Sammy Sari designing them, but she might have designed them, but like, some guy named Fred is sourcing the material. So, and
I'm sure that when the collaboration got going with Zara, like, she wouldn't have done it if she didn't feel
I'm
that.
sorry, guys. I mean, I don't mean to disparage her. She's probably a very nice person, but someone rolls a dump truck of Zara money up to our houses and says, "Hey, we want a cycling fashion week collabo, but it's going to be crap. Just tell everyone it's good because they trust your opinion." I'm doing it
I
in a
don't know,
second.
Tony.
Oh, I would.
I'm too loyal to the club. I'm too loyal to the club. Can't do it.
This show's a democracy. I'm with
Yeah.
Tony. We're the Cycling Fashion Week times Zara capsule is coming soon.
I'm not saying she like meant to produce anything crappy or whatever, but I'm sure like whatever money that Zara has that could pay her to sort of be associated and give some of her credibility doesn't necessarily mean that she had this, incredible creative control.
I don't know. If it's a serious cyclist, I would kind of trust that they would have.
If it's someone who makes money off of pictures on the internet, maybe they need a little more money.
My point is, she probably had full creative control or maximal for the design, but who knows if she was, in the warehouse sourcing fabrics. We talked to Attacker last week, and they were talking about their process of going through all these like technical fabrics, blah blah blah. I don't know if that's the process Zara is going through. I'm highly skeptical that they're just not finding the cheapest thing per meter, or cheapest fabric per meter, and slapping some culottes together. So
Your pronunciation of culotte is ridiculous, but
yeah, whatever. I'm a half American, half Canadian. What do you expect? I challenge Zara to send us a pair of these bibs, because we will test them. And we rave about a lot of the brands we talk about on here when we have their kit and we try it out. But our raves are genuine. If something isn't good, we will say so. Send us shorts. I want to try them because I don't think they're any good.
If anyone ever thought to question whether Alex was truly French Canadian or not, him criticizing Warren's pronunciation of a French word is the most French Canadian thing in the world. And so we've proven without a shadow of a doubt, if anyone thought, oh, maybe they're lying to give a bit of like, sort of multilingual credibility to the podcast, I think that proves without a shadow of a doubt to anyone who thought maybe we were lying about him being French Canadian, because that is the ultimate French Canadian thing, is insulting an Anglo's effort.
Well, I didn't make much of an effort. It would be culotte.
It's pretty half-assed effort.
Culotte?
Yeah.
Culottes.
Culotte. No, not culotte. Culotte.
Oh, culotte.
They're ass pants.
Culotte.
Cool.
Ass pant.
Actually, that's kind of what it means. Yeah. Look, Tony, I think the Cycling Fashion Week times Rapha times not Rapha
Zara.
Zara collab. I think that's a long ways off. I realize it's a democracy here, but I
Vetoed.
just don't see that happening.
We'll
anytime
see how
soon.
much money they bring to the table.
At least if it could be like a cool, slightly smaller brand, like I don't know, Drake's or something like that. I don't know, but
OVO?
not Zara.
A Cycling Fashion
No,
Week
no.
OVO?
You guys are so Toronto. No, Drake's from London. The
Drake's of
Oh.
London. Yeah. Hit us up, Drake's.
Or Drake.
Okay, now it is time for our next segment, which Alex talked about off the top of the show. We are very excited to welcome Quoc Pham, the founder of Quoc Shoes. They are an independent British brand launched in 2009. And if you don't know them, they are the makers of, in my opinion, some really sleek and stylish performance, road, and gravel cycling shoes, as well as what they call their weekend cycling shoes, which are commuter or like city style bike shoes that for those of us who, ride their bikes, not just for going around fast and Lycra. I personally actually first heard about Quoc with their night lace-up shoe, I think around 4 or 5 years ago. I first saw it on the internet, started popping up some nice white shoes with black accents, and at least all the photos I saw had some really nice pink laces that really popped. Since then, they've released a lot more models, which we will get into. This is our first time talking to a shoe brand. We've obviously talked about shoes quite a bit, mainly about whether it's white or black shoes. Thank you, Quoc, for joining Cycling Fashion Week.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Just to start, maybe just tell us a bit about your first experience with cycling, your background, and how you first got into cycling.
I grew up in Vietnam for 5 years, born, and my brother, I remember having my mum, dad bought him a bike because he was older than me, 2 years older. And I just remember chasing him everywhere, asking for a go. Can I have a go? And it was just like typical brother, no. And then just ride off. And there was it's the first time of experience, like desiring something that you can't have. And it stayed with me ever since.
How did you go from that to discovering, I don't know, what we now maybe call quote unquote road cycling, with kit and that kind of thing? And was that a gradual kind of evolution, or how did you discover that aspect?
Then I came to UK when I was about 8. My whole family immigrated to UK, and going to school back and forth, and it was the most convenient thing for a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It's either a half an hour walk or a bike, which is like 10 minutes. So I learned how to ride a bike actually in UK. It was a BMX, and evolved from there, evolved into going to college and getting my first fixie. And then, after a while, you get bored with a single gear and you evolve into adding more gears to the bike. And now, I have my favorite bike, which is a titanium, just an evolution of, once you have something, just constantly upgrading.
The fixie to road cyclists has sort of become a story as old as time now. I mean, that's where I sort of went from, got into the fixie sort of world through Match FS and Macaframa, and then kind of what you're saying, you get to 40 or 50k and maybe a few hills, and you realize this just doesn't do it. You start to explore the kind of next step, which is a road bike to get you a little farther and a little bit faster.
I mean, it's a good training bike as well. I remember just how you ride a fixie so long, your legs never stop spinning. So when you're taking that onto road cycling, you without knowing, your leg just constantly, on the move without resting.
It also sort of forces you into a pretty clean pedal stroke, because if you jerk yourself around on a fixie, it'll throw you off like a bucking bronco. And so
yeah, that's right.
It gives you a pretty efficient pedal stroke, which not only is good for your cardiovascular, but it makes you look good on the bike. It's not just the kit you buy, it's also the way you ride gives you style on the bike.
Oh yeah, style is everything.
Speaking of that, of style, you went to school for fashion design, right?
I found out very early that I have a thing for dress. I made my first dress in art and textile class in secondary school at the age of 14. Take a piece of fabric and the teacher say, okay, tie-dye it, backtik it, and then go to the shop to buy the paper pattern, a dress pattern, and cut it out and put the whole thing together. And my mum taught me how to put it in the zip. And at that age, I was just like, I just loved it ever since. I remember that day I was speaking to my teacher, this is what I want to do in creative. I dropped maths, I dropped IT or whatever, and just full gun ho taking up, art and design, art history, everything to do with art world, creative world, and I just applied myself, and that was a big moment for me. But I got in St. Martin doing fashion women's wear. The thing with St. Martin is that it attracts so many amazing people around the world, students. There's been so many famous names come out from that college. But what I learned from that college is two things. It teach you to push boundary, to always experiment. It came from more of an artistic approach, I think. And secondly, it teaches you hard work. I remember in college, we don't stop, we don't sleep. It's like project nonstop. We give a project on Monday, and on Friday, on Wednesday we had to present it. Show our design collection, food development, and also if you're a superstar, you make a sample out of it. So all of us being super competitive, just constantly working, trying to be the next big, Alexander McQueen.
You talk about pushing boundaries, and obviously you're sort of dive into art. When you're in the fashion world, you understand that style and trend aren't necessarily the same thing. And I was kind of wondering what your thoughts on sort of current cycling style is, because sometimes it feels that style is sort of overridden by trends in the current sort of cycling in the current cycling world. It's not as unique and sort of boundary pushing. It's more of kind of a uniform. It's following what was done on, people see on Instagram wearing, one kind of thing. Do you think cycling needs a little more pushing boundaries, whether it be from the companies or just an individual rider coming up with ways to style themselves?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's really hard, actually. Allow me to go back a little bit. When I was transitioned from doing fashion and moving on to cycling shoes, I realized I cannot be doing crazy flamboyant design. It wouldn't work. It needs to be functional. It needs to work. It needs to have functionality to it. I do agree of pushing boundary of breaking down walls and barriers and trying to get more women involved. But at the same time, the product needs to work. It needs to function well. So there's certain restriction that you need to abide by. For things like Lachlan Merton, the way he pushed things, he just doesn't stop. He ride like the Badland, non-sleep, because he knows that, the way he works, that he pushes mind beyond his body, beyond limits. And that's the way he do things. And that's inspiring people. So if I was to ask me for my approach in shoes, the way we push in at Quoc is colors. I always experiment with colors and try to break down walls and soften out the colors. I remember first when we start researching cycling shoes, before I launched the brand, I visited shops and it was like a whole wall of like black shoes, because it just sells black shoes everywhere. And then you get maybe an odd like a bright blue Shimano shoes, or some really funky color, or yellow Mavic, but it was just black, and it was just so boring. And from then on, of course, black sell. You must have that in stable. At the same time, you have your core colors, but you also need to push and experiment with just breaking down walls and boundary. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit boring and repetitive.
Wanted to ask you the following question. You moved into cycling shoes. Educate us and our listeners on what makes a good cycling shoe, because we're keen cyclists. We've owned a lot of cycling shoes over the years. I think we have our own opinions of what we like in cycling shoes, but from a designer perspective, in your opinion, Quoc, what defines a good cycling shoe? What are the characteristics that you want to see on a cycling shoe?
Comfortable. Comfort is the most important thing. We design product that we don't think is there. So once you have it on your feet, the product should work, and it should enhance your ride experience. It should aid, and it should be non-distracting. If the product you're riding there's a hot spot or something poking out on your feet, that's not a good product. That's not good. So comfort is the most important thing. And also when you're doing long distance ride and doing competition and doing multi-day trip, the key to winning actually is stay on the saddle, stay on the bike longer. So you have the uncomfortable shoes and you have to constantly get off or adjust the shoes or something. That's a flaw in the product itself. So comfort is king in my eyes.
You're saying, you have to work within parameters. Comfort is king. Being a sort of a designer of fashion first, maybe where you could sort of expand your efforts. Do you like that a cycling shoe has sort of a restrictive nature? Does it kind of give you a different angle of design, because you still want it to be beautiful? You still want, you want the aesthetic, but you have to approach it with a certain set of parameters, because you could design the most beautiful shoe in the world, and like you said, if it's not comfortable, if people don't want to wear it, if they want to take it off after a couple K, the shoe's useless.
It's connected, your pedal, your knees, your body, the whole thing is connected in one. So you need to be super careful with the last. The last is the actual mold of the shoes, and everything's built around the last. So for us, it took me, because I didn't come from the bike shoe world or bike shoe industry. I had to learn everything from scratch. And the good thing about being from UK, we have a history of handcraft shoes. I learned about lasting from UK, from the factory like Spring Last up in Northumberland, and you take a block of wood and you sculpt that into a last, and then you have a general shape, and then you look at someone's feet and you measure, and it's certain, make it a little bit wider, etc. But the last is so important in terms of it took us 10 years or more than 10 years to get where we are. It's every single year we fine tuning. So your question is restricting the parameters is that you need to make it aesthetically look beautiful, but at the same time it needs to work.
Is that why it took you 10 years to develop the last, or is it just a matter of like just perfecting it kind of year after year?
Perfecting it years after year. When we first had it, I came from our last was quite narrow because it was coming from like kind of dress shoes making industry. Over time, our last got wider, and our shape changes. When the shoe is on the pedal, your feet is very different. The shape of your feet is attached to the cleats, different to when you're walking on the ground. So our last on our road shoe is slightly different curvature to our weekend last. Our weekend last is a bit more flat because you have to consider it needs to be walking like 50% of the time, and also cycling, where the road shoe is like 90% on the pedals. So the shape is slightly different.
It's interesting that you mentioned the great British tradition of craft in shoemaking in like Northampton, the likes of Edward Green and Crockett and Jones. So when we discuss what makes a good cycling shoe as well, you mentioned comfort. You basically, you don't want to notice that you're wearing the shoe. If you're noticing it, that's because there's something wrong about it. What about materials in shoemaking? Like, are there specific materials that you think are superior to other materials and that people should look for, or what do you think on that?
At the moment, we predominantly use microfiber on our shoes. It's like a synthetic version of leather. When I first started out, most 90% of our shoe was made from leather because I understand it well. But leather is great for dress shoes, but leather is not so great in the rain and for functional purposes. For my eyes, leather is still really great, but microfiber is a better or more modern version of that. Microfiber, you can make it so it's sweat absorbent, it's durable as well.
What about the sole? A lot of companies are pitching, obviously, carbon sole as being the best material there. What's your view on what makes the best cycling shoe sole?
Depends on how you ride, what kind of discipline you ride. So if you road racing competition, carbon is the best, it's the lightest, stiffest. But if you're doing long days trip, multi-days riding, I wouldn't recommend them because your feet just taking pounding because there's nowhere. The only thing that absorbs the shock is your feet and your knees, So for a long distance, I would recommend carbon composite, like injection nylon, something, and that will absorb the vibration much better. And also, better for walking, flexibility, etc.
And sorry, back to the uppers, because I also read that you only use 1 or 2 pieces material for the uppers. Is that aesthetic choice? Is that a performance thing, a weight thing? Like, why that essentially is what I'm asking.
It's simplicity. It's to do with the more thing you put on a product, the more chance it can go wrong. You want the product to last and you want to make it simple. So, and also it's harder when something's more simple, any imperfection, it will shows up on the product. So, you get, when the product has so many materials, so much going on that you can hide imperfections. Not to say it's ugly or anything like that, but for us, a bike shoe, it needs to be like, you can hose it down or you can wipe it down very fast. The product can't hold water, or the product doesn't need to hold dirt. So it needs to be super simple to wash off any debris or any, muck very fast. So that's the reason why for a single cut upper.
I'm sure we've all experienced the dirty shoe with too many sort of stitches and material pieces where you just can't get that piece of dirt out of the little, some little crevice is there. No matter how much you try and wash it, you got to get like a little toothpick if you want to be as sort of meticulous as I know some cyclists are about keeping their shoes clean. So it gives a great style, but again, back to practicality.
I wanted to ask you, Quoc, when did you move to Taiwan originally, and what brought you to Taiwan?
Because I know a little bit of shoe industry in terms of the bike worlds in Taiwan. over 10 years ago. Pretty much 90% of sport athletic shoes are made by a Taiwanese company. So it's Nike, Adidas, their manufacturers, Taiwanese partners. Be it factories now is not in Taiwan anymore. It's in China, it's Vietnam, but the hub of the shoe industry is actually from Taiwan.
So the reason why I was asking is because I've heard great things about the cycling scene in Taiwan. So Taiwan's obviously, as you said, they're a hub for shoe manufacturing and shoe companies, but they've also historically been a hub for cycling companies, for the likes of Giant, et cetera. They've been based in Taiwan, and I've heard a lot of people go on bike trips to Taiwan, or literally like are based in Taiwan because you've got weather you can ride all year long. So tell us a little bit about the cycling scene in Taiwan.
Oh yeah, no, you're completely right, Alex. Cycling in Taiwan is amazing. It's a small tropical island, and you can ride it north to south within 3 or 4 days. You can do 2 days, like non-sleep. But it's a beautiful island. The roads are really immaculate. Great climbing here, and there's really amazing cycle route as well. The government put in infrastructure where you can ride north to south and all on bike paths.
It feels like almost if you're on Zwift, it feels like a real life version of Watopia or something like that. Honestly, Taiwan feels amazing. It's on my bucket list of places to go cycling.
Yeah, we have the things with the KOM, King of the Mountain, and Taiwan is, I think, the most famous for that, and people flock around the world to ride that once a year.
You move to Taiwan obviously means, for the shoe industry, it means you're super invested, but coming from fashion and women's clothing and working with more sort of textile materials in that sense, I guess the question is, why shoes? Why not go into the kit game, right, where you probably patterns are more similar, fabrics would be much different in cycling kit than in a dress, but it seems like that would be a sort of a more obvious choice for a fashion designer who loves cycling would want to start making kit, whereas you seem to have gone full board into these shoes. What was it about shoes, besides the fact that shoes are the most important part of an outfit, even off the bike? The shoes are, I only own a few pair of pants, but I own about 50 pairs of shoes. So it shows kind of where I take it. But, why cycling shoes? Why not kind of use your skills for other parts of cycling?
That's a good question, Tony. I think the simple answer is I have a fetish for shoes. That's it. Growing up, I'm always like, not collecting shoes, but always want nicer feet, and also coming from UK, you sport for choice, and you just, the standard and the level of shoes are so much more higher in the UK. When I started this brand, I combined the two things I love most, cycling and shoes. And why didn't I pick fashion? Maybe because I was burnt from it as well, partly. After St. Martin, I have my own menswear label. And fashion is it's a tough game. Can you imagine 12 years ago we were doing spring summer collection? Every single 6 months you need to come up with a new collection. Each collection has 34 different pieces, and each pieces has their own kind of logistic issues, fabrics, stitching, buttons, etc. But now it's like Monday to Friday. Someone can see something Monday and make it on the shop floor by Friday.
So are you more of a trainer's guy, like in terms of your fetish for shoes? What we call in North America sneakers, but I know you guys in the UK call trainers, or more of a sort of custom-made leather shoe, a canvas shoe, maybe a sort of Vans or Spare or something. What's your fetishized shoe? What's your collection consist of, or are you just all across the board?
Bespoke handmade shoes. I appreciate the craftsmanship behind it. If you take care of it, that shoe can last forever. And putting on the shoes in the morning, beautiful shoes, just lift your whole outfit, lift your morale, everything. You can have an amazing suit, but if you put on the dirty pair of trainers or shoes, that's it, the whole thing's ruined. Forget it.
Quoc, when you said you had a fetish for shoes earlier, I thought you were going to say you have a fetish for feet, because Tony talks way too much about his feet on this podcast. So I was
That's Warren.
oh,
That's
okay,
Warren.
well, these two guys, they love to talk about their feet. So I was going to say you've come to the right place, to the right podcast.
But Quoc, I have a very important question for you, and I don't know, maybe just as a cultural thing, especially in Asia. To me, because the shoe is the most important part of my outfit, it's what I think the deepest about when I'm going out somewhere. How am I going to feel? Where am I out? I hate taking off my shoes at other people's houses. Now, I do have some caveats there, because I do understand that we live in a tough climate in Canada, and I'm not here, muck dirt around everybody, but on kind of a nice day when I go to someone's house and I have to take off their shoes, to me, my whole outfit is blown. Do you try and keep your shoes on when you go inside, or do you care? Do you think it ruins your outfit? What's your take on the shoes off at a party?
It depends on who you like. It depends on the occupant and the owner of the house. If they request you take your shoes off, you take your shoes off. But I'm okay with that.
You're definitely taking your cycling shoes off when you come to my place because I don't want you to ruin my floors with your cleats.
Well, cycling shoes are a bit different, but when I've had parties where I've requested shoes on and people have taken them off, and I've had to be like, no, I want you to have your shoes on. A, I don't like feet, so I don't even want to see you in your socks. And B, like, hopefully you've taken some time and some care in your shoe choice. Again, I own, of sort of my wardrobe, shoes is the number one thing I own in terms of quantity. And I think very deeply about the shoe I will wear when I go out. So I understand you got to be respectful of the host, but if you come to my house, I want your shoes on.
That's cool.
I can't believe you asked that. Actually, I can. Back to cycling shoes. I did want to ask, I saw your first shoe model you made, which I think was called the Fixed England.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about, these beautiful bespoke dress shoes, like non-cycling shoes. But if our listeners, if you go and Google the Quoc Fixed England, they actually kind of, in my opinion, look like really nice dress leather shoes. And I was curious how you kind of went from that in the beginning to eventually have evolved into these really nice performance road shoes, or the more, I don't know the right word for it, I'd just say more interesting looking like gravel shoes than Gran Tourer. But I was curious kind of that evolution of how you got from like these like really nice leather cycling shoes to the performance area.
Going back to the story, I bought my fixed bike, and that shoe it's called a fixed model mainly because it's designed for the toe case and strap. So the toe, the pattern design on the shoe line up with the metal toe cage. And I want to have nice shoes for myself to ride around town and meet friends for drinks. And then when I got my road bike and etc., so that evolved naturally onto designing road shoes, and partly a little bit selfish, design for myself, what I want to wear. And luckily there's a few people like what I did.
I love that you extended your love of sort of bespoke shoes into your fixie shoe, because bespoke shoes isn't my thing, but we just sort of wore Vans essentially for the same reason. It's not as beautifully designed with that, but they fit so well into the toe cage as a pair of Vans eras. So it was like my only shoe for when I got into fixed gear. So I like that you took your version of kind of the shoe you loved and was able to make it for yourself, so you could have something stylish when you got off the bike.
We'll be sure to drop a photo of the old Fixed England into the show notes for this, because I think they're worth looking at. And yeah, just like selfishly, any plans of ever bringing that back?
We can't find a manufacturer in the UK. That we made a few run of it, and now on top of my head, there's only 3 manufacturers left in the UK that can potentially make the shoes. The problem with UK industry is that they don't invest in new machinery. So they're still making Goodyear well construction and traditional shoes. And I would like to make it again, Warren. It's the first product. If you were to ask me what's my favorite shoes in the collection, that is my favorite shoe, because that starts everything for me. Mm-hmm. But right now, there's no manufacturer in UK that's, I say, willing to do it.
Kind of contrasting that, I did want to ask you specifically about the Gran Tourer gravel shoes, which I think you're on the second iteration of, because in my mind, like when I see those, I think so many cycling shoes, like you could say kind of look the same, especially road shoes. Like, whereas the first time I saw your Gran Tourer shoes, like I think they looked pretty different from any other like gravel shoe on the market. I'm just curious, like kind of where the idea for that design came from, and was it a conscious choice to like want to make something different, or was it like functional?
It was functional. I was, my friend and I was riding, bikepacking, doing camping trips, and it was just designing a shoe for that kind of customer. Something that's, really grippy, that you can walk all day. Something that it's less maintenance, you don't have to look after it, and something that's, it's kind of, you can wear for the whole year or around the world trip. So the idea is to make the product kind of bomb-proof.
I hate bike packing, but I love the shoes. So I may get a pair for sort of gravel or even cross, but I will not bike pack in them because I will not bike pack.
You should do fast bike packing. And what we did in I did with my friend in north of Taipei, we just pack a bike with panniers, road bike. You don't have to do a road bike. And we just ride like 180 kilometers a day and you check into the hotel that evening. So you don't need to bike pack. So it's a fast packer. It's a nicer way of doing it.
Credit card bike packing hotel, I'm
Yeah,
more
that's
than
it.
into. It's the camping part of it that I'm not into. The carrying all a full tent and a bivy and a mattress and all this stuff.
It's because you weren't wearing the right shoes.
Could be. I do not have great sort of gravel. Well, I think mine are technically cross country mountain bike shoes. I do not have that, so maybe investing in a pair would be better. But I always say that it's not quite as fun as cycling and not quite as fun as camping. It's like the two worst parts of those two sports makes bike packing. So either camp or ride your bike, not both.
Anyway, being a independent shoe brand, what's that like having to go up against like what I'll call like the bigger cycling brands? Because obviously like Specialized does shoes, Shimano, that kind of thing. What are some of the challenges you face in going up against bigger brands like that?
The challenge for starting a company, starting a brand is everything. Especially where I came from. Like I said earlier, I didn't have any experience in the bicycle and also shoe industry. So I have to learn everything from scratch. Be working working on the factory floor, understanding how the whole procedure work, learning leather, etc. So understanding how the product works. And then you got things about trying to raise capital. The thing of independent, you just have to just do everything yourself. When I closed down my clothing brand, I had just like 6 boxes of sample, old production clothes to my name. I had nothing left. And what I did on the weekends in London, we have this called East Street Market, where you just take a stall Saturday and Sunday. I was like, like heads in my hand. What do I do? What do I do next? The two things I love, cycling shoes. Okay, figured out that's what I want to do. The next step, how to raise money. So I didn't have anything left. So I had all these samples. So I took the weekend store to sell the clothing to generate money. And, I realized I was pretty good at it. Every weekend I was making a decent amount. And by the end of the month, I can afford to buy a ticket to Taiwan. And that's what I did. I bought a ticket to Taiwan. And when I got to Taiwan, I was like, okay, what do I do next? Google, like world source trading website, manufacturing, in Asia. Like so many people, only two people got back to me. One was China, and they said, oh, you're too small, forget you. And the next person, his name is Kevin, actually. He's from Taichung, middle of Taiwan. He emailed me and I called him back, and the next day I visit him and show him my design. And luckily he supported me. Okay, I'll make this for you, 5 colors. I put back in my bag, flew back to the UK. Okay, what's the next step I want to do? Okay, I never had experience of sale. I was a designer in my old world. I just stone cold call shops. What's the best shops in London? Condor Cycle. Okay, I call that. I called up, made an appointment. The next day, 11 o'clock, go in the showroom, open the bag. The fixed model was an earlier version of that in 5 colors. And he was like, his name is Carl, the apparel guy. He was like, oh, okay, give me 20 pairs. He loved it. And I repeat the same thing, 5 other shops around London, giving them a little bit of territory. And everyone placed an order on the first one. And I was like, okay, I got this order, sold some to my friends, 20 pairs. And that was the next step. Okay, took out the weekend market again. I had to sell more clothes so I can buy another ticket back to Taiwan so I can present the order to the factory. And that's what I did. And it's, when I showed him the order, it was like 120 pairs, my first ever order. He was like, what? He was expecting thousands years. That this kid is like bullshitting his way through, and somehow he made it for me, and it just snowball slowly evolved from then on.
As we've talked about, you've evolved the brand. You have these really nice gravel and road models. I think I mentioned the Night Lace Up, which is the first time I ever heard of Quoc, and you also now have the mono road shoes as well as the Gran Tourer. Do you have like bigger plans, more models, or what's the next few steps?
It's expanding our range. At the moment, we've got so much more to do. We want to be number one in the world, and we still have a long way to go. The thing, going back to your earlier question, why is it different from us, is that we do everything ourselves. We design everything in-house. All the development from us, all the tooling, all the investment came from us. So we know our product intuitively. as opposed to some bigger brands, a bigger house, they sometimes outsource the design to the design agency. When you do that, when every 2 years they switch to a new design agency, that design agency have a different way of doing things. So their product may look different after a couple of years, or they haven't all the learning that gone through from the first agency hasn't progressed on to the product. So for us, it's like 13 years of evolution of making the product better, fine tuning, and develop everything in house. And it's much more harder, Warren, and it's much more expensive. When you make a mistake, it's like your neck could be on the line. We have a long way to go in terms of there's so much more model we can develop. And also for us, we never moved away from our urban range, like the urbanite or the weekend shoes, because I come from the cycling industry. From the fashion industry. I still think that's a big chunk of the market. Potentially, we have something like the Chelsea boots coming out, where I'm trying to merge the two worlds together. It's like lifestyle and bike. How Nike, when it first started out, was track running shoes, but now people wear it to the boardroom. So I see from that. So potential where we go in is, expand our range, but expanding towards more like lifestyle fashion world. That's where we're going.
We like to end all of our interviews with what we call rapid fire questions. So it's just like short question and just looking for kind of like your gut short reaction. So tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Laces on shoes or dials?
Oh, dial now.
Yeah.
I love lace, but the convenience of dial is that's it.
Yeah, we're big proponents of. It's branded BOA. We say the double BOA, but I guess you could just say the double dial if you're not using the BOA brand. But the double dial is the way to go. Laces had a popularity, a couple of years ago, but I think everyone's moved on to the dial.
Speaking of shoes, though, that's mostly what I'm talking about. White or black shoes?
Pink.
Ooh.
Oh, I love that.
But you don't currently have a pink model for road, do you?
No, we don't. But it's next year we have something that's different.
Yeah, I was about to say, did you just like give us a hint at what's to come?
Yeah.
I would be a buyer for like a Giro pink shoe that would match my bike perfectly. I would love that.
White or black socks or pink?
White socks.
And that goes with the pink shoe. That's like a good.
Yeah.
Because we had a guest on a little while ago when we were talking about gold shoes, and we asked him what sock goes with the gold shoe, and he said white. So it seems the white sock goes with everything but the black shoe.
The thing is, though, if you have white, pink shoes and pink socks, sometimes the pink don't match because it's a different fabric, a different thing. And, having that thing is not quite matched sometimes. Like, if you match seamlessly perfectly, then I go for pink socks for sure.
And then lastly, I think you mentioned you have a titanium bike, but in terms of like bike frame, steel, titanium, or carbon?
Titanium. One of my favorite brands is called Enigma from UK, handmade titanium. It's like butter. It's light, stiff enough, it's very nimble, but at the same time, go over a bump. It's just like a Range Rover. You just soften out everything.
Okay, well, that's pretty much all the questions we have for you, Quoc. So thanks so much for joining us. And for our listeners, be sure to check them out online at quoc.cc or follow them on Instagram at Quoc Shoes. As we said, they have some really beautiful road and gravel stuff, and as well even some city options with the weekend shoes. So yeah, Quoc, thanks so much for joining us. It's been really great to finally get some insight into the shoe world, because I'm the guy who has the weird shaped feet, so I'm like forever looking for the pair of shoes that look good and feel good too.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. And one more last thing, our mission is not to make just shoes. Our mission is how to encourage more people riding bicycle with beautiful shoes. The more people on bikes, it's just better for everybody, for the planet, etc. So that's our mission, actually, is how to encourage more people to ride a bicycle with our shoes.
We love that.
It's a great mission, yeah.
We're trying that too, despite being called gatekeepers. We actually want people into cycling.
Yeah.
We just want to make some jokes and have a little fun with it.
Trying to help people navigate the kind of confusing world of cycling fashion, which we all struggled with coming in. So
yeah,
totally get where you're coming from.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Okay, the much anticipated segment into the Canal, where we throw something that we don't like from the world of cycling or cycling fashion into Montreal's picturesque, scenic Lachine Canal. Hopefully we don't have to do a mea culpa for this one next week, Tony, or maybe that becomes a weekly feature where every week we apologize for something that we threw in the canal that we shouldn't have. Why don't we start with Warren this week?
I don't think I'll be apologizing for this one. This is sort of a listener sourced one again. I did that a few weeks ago about the outside is free hashtag being the live, laugh, love of cycling. This week, a listener on Instagram sent us a DM. His name is at J Potts. Hopefully he doesn't mind us calling him out. Maybe I'll be apologizing next week for like attracting hate DMs to this guy's account. But he sent us a photo of a bike saddle that was, as he said, slammed. What he meant is whether a bike seat is pushed all the way to the fore or the aft of your seat post. And he sent a photo of one that was pushed all the way forward, like to the end of the rails. Slamming your seat is in the canal. I fully agree with Jay's take, because if you have to have your saddle either all the way back or all the way forward, your bike doesn't fit you. So it looks bad aesthetically, especially all the way forward. It looks like a triathlete seat, but it also almost certainly means your bike's the wrong size, or you're running maybe like 140 millimeter stem because you want to look cool.
But it negates it, right? Like if you've got I would cut the stem back to a 100 and then have it like this. This look like beyond your bike doesn't fit, which always will make you look kind of bad. But like this look is so terrible because there's a sense of proportions between where the seat post, seat clamp, and rails kind of go, and most are marked off, so you're not really supposed to go too far forward or back. There's a nice kind of look to it. Like the picture he sent, which we'll add to our Instagram as an example, it just looks horrendous. Like I don't even care that it means your bike doesn't fit. It just looks so terrible.
I should acknowledge that the seat post this one is on wasn't a setback post. So it's not like they had a setback post and they just needed, a zero setback seat post. It was a zero setback seat post. So, and they slammed it all the way forward. So yeah, it looks terrible. It means your bike doesn't fit you. It's definitely in the canal. Triathletes are also in the canal. Not apologizing for that.
Yeah, it's true that it looks like a TT bike, and obviously we're not going to take style cues from people on TT bikes or triathletes. Generally, you do the opposite of what they do, and you're in pretty good shape.
That actually that's a good life lesson for all cyclists, especially new ones. Look at a triathlete and then just do the opposite of whatever they're doing, whatever their sock length is, whatever kind of kit they're wearing,
Sleeve length,
the way they style their bike. Like you just say, okay, the opposite. So this, you're riding down, you see this triathlete, he's got ankle socks on, he's got a sleeveless jersey, all black tires, 750 bottles. You just say, okay, I know what I need to do.
Okay, I'm going to go next. So my canal this week is actually a bit more of a life lesson, or it's not necessarily cycling style related. It's more cycling behavior or demeanor related. So summer is back, which is obviously good news for us in the Northern Hemisphere, which means that long rides are back as well. And if long rides are back, it means that needing to eat something in the middle of your ride is back. And obviously I like to snack every 30K or so, every hour or so. Can't keep going unless you're eating. But I'm going to throw something in the canal this week, and it's people that eat kind of whole meals as ride snacks. So people that bring a sandwich or a burrito or a slice of pizza or some like cold lasagna in their back pocket. You guys are disgusting weirdos. You're not supposed to do that on a bike ride. You're supposed to eat snacks, things that are sweet, that have a lot of carbohydrates, that can keep you going, but that are relatively small, can fit in a back pocket. Biggest you can eat, you can carry around and be a musette maybe. But people that are eating like whole meals, burritos or whatever, like pasta, it's just extremely weird, and I find it a little bit gross. And I'm going to canal this week.
Alex, a couple of years ago, I would have agreed with you, but I've spent so many years eating gels, Cliff Blocks, weird fruit bars that aren't actually made for cycling, but bananas. I personally am open to bringing real food on rides. Would I bring leftover pizza? No. I would consider a burrito though.
Your stomach must feel awful, like after a burrito with beans in there.
No, your stomach feels awful after eating gels for like 6
It's true,
hours.
and actually, not to negate my own take, but you guys will recall about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, when Tony Warren and I did a gravel ride. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that on the podcast, but we actually drove over to Western Massachusetts in Deerfield, Massachusetts, to take part in a beautiful gravel ride there, which is called the Deerfield Dirt Road Randonnée D2R2. Beautiful ride there in the Berkshire Mountains in Western Mass, and actually in southern Vermont a little bit too, near Bennington and Brattleboro. It's a very, very long ride. It's 180 kilometers of gravel with something like 4,400 meters of elevation. And it is true that at the end of that ride, and obviously they were serving a meal in the middle, which honestly at that point you can't really avoid it. But I was getting a little sick of bars and gels and stuff like that. It kind of makes you want to puke. But my take though, my Canal is people that go on a 70K ride on a random Sunday that are eating a burrito in the middle of the ride, you're a barbarian.
I disagree.
I'm a bit of two minds here, right? Because it's well known in the Toronto cycling community that I don't ever remember to get snacks like prior to a ride, and I'm like, hey, who's got a snack for me? So sometimes like, okay, like I'm getting chirped. I can't keep asking these people. So the other day I made a peanut butter and jelly wrap as my snack because I was like, I can't ask people can they have stuff. I didn't have time to go to the grocery store. It was an early morning meet and stuff. And so I was kind of like, all right, this is genius. But then inevitably what happened while I was eating it, I got jam all over my hands, which subsequently got all over my handlebars, and basically had to make the ride stop so I could wash the jam off my handlebars because I hate being sticky. In a way, I thought it was a good idea. And it actually tasted pretty good. But from a practicality standpoint, I think I'll go back to my like gels and gummies and stuff. I don't completely agree with Alex on this one.
I like pastries personally. I think pastry is perfect.
But while riding, you're gonna pull out a croissant.
Well, not a
while
croissant.
riding?
Croissant has too much fat in it anyway, and just kind of upsets my stomach. But like, I don't know, like date squares or a little piece of like a thin piece of cake or muffin or something.
I make my own granola bars for riding because I used to, but I would say that's bordering on like real food because the ones I make have like peanut butter, dates, raisins, chocolate chips, maple syrup. They don't stick together like a processed store-bought granola bar, but they still hold together. And I don't know, I'm all about that. Like it's great ride food. It doesn't really leave your hands sticky. I was on the ride with Tony. He's talking about he got jam fucking everywhere. It was yeah, maybe wasn't the best choice. So I want to say I'm of two minds, but I think if you just pick the right real food, and maybe if you know how to wrap a burrito, I don't. So if I brought a burrito, the same thing would happen to me. That happened to Tony, but then I get it. But I'm tired of eating all this like expensive processed bike gels, which are basically just like Swedish berries. If you want gels, just go to the gas station. Shout out gas station food cyclists. Go there and just buy like Swedish berries, Sour Patch Kids, whatever candy you want. It's all the same. Same stuff.
I want to caveat my take though. If you do a long ride and you stop in a restaurant mid-ride to eat real food, that is civilized. But if you carry a burrito with you, you're a barbarian. I know it's a complicated take, but that is the truth. It's definitive. Tony, what do you got?
I don't want to say commuters. It doesn't make any sense. It's too general. But there's a certain type of commuter, and this is when you're as a road cyclist on a ride. You'll be with a group, and there's a certain type of commuter that I guess sees you. You're in your kit. You got your group. You're supposed to be fast, and they basically like ride thresholds. They ride VO2 max for 800 meters to catch you and your group, to get past you, and they always kind of look over like, hey, I'm on a commuter, you guys are supposed to be real cyclists, and then they blow up, and you and the 8 other people you're with have to inevitably pass them on a busy road while they're like slowly pedaling. So that guy or girl who does that is into the Canal. Like if you see a group of cyclists and you're on your commuter and you think you can catch them, just don't do it. Like you're not. Like you're just you can't catch them. You can't stay ahead of them. And maybe if they're on like a really chill recovery ride or whatever, but like it's happened too many times where some person just like, and you could see it, they're like dogging it. They're like in an aero tuck, like trying to push past us or whatever. And you're, especially a lot of it when you're in the city near the end of the ride, kind of casually coming back. And then 30 meters up, the guy, your girl's just like, barely pedaling. And you're like, okay, now I got to get into the middle lane of the traffic. All 8 of us have to get past this person because they thought they were going to be, impress themselves or make us think like, wow, we're doing it wrong. We should be on a 1978 Raleigh with one brake.
Okay, that's another episode of Cycling Fashion Week in the books. Thank you very much to Quoc Pham for coming on the podcast, joining us from Taiwan. Great interview with Quoc. Follow his brand, check it out. And also go to our partners at leclub.cc. They carry Quoc shoes, very nice models available at leclub.cc. Not only Quoc shoes, but also a lot of other cool brands that have kit that you want to get your hands on, be it MAAP, Albion, Fingers Crossed socks. They've got everything. They've got the best brands. They've got the best coffee as well. And for our listeners, we have a very special discount code. Get 15% off your orders at leclub.cc using the code FashionWeek15. So just type that discount code on your keyboard, FashionWeek15, and get 15% off your order of extremely nice cycling kit or shoes at leclub.cc. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Warren, for another episode. Follow us on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. Send us DMs, send us emails, cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. We've got a lot of other interviews with people in the cycling industry, not just brands, coming up in the next few episodes. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more Cycling Fashion Week content. In the meantime, be well and enjoy your rides. See ya.